Hey y'all! Well, I'm going to do a little different video today for my normal tube hi-fi electronics content. And you don't have to be involved in this hobby for this video to be relevant to maybe what you're doing. And I'll give you a little background on this. This vacuum tube hi-fi electronics is a hobby of mine and something I enjoy doing in my retirement. And been making some of these amplifiers that I've sold to my friends and to just some local folks that I know or I've met. And, you know, up to this point, hasn't really been what I would even consider a business, maybe just kind of a little side hustle, right? So then I created a YouTube channel that started getting popular, started getting some income from that, created a website, got a Patreon site, started getting some more income from that, and I started getting a little concerned about, well, okay, I've got this income coming in, and I know all these companies, once you make over $600, they start filing things with the IRS. So I didn't want to get in trouble with the IRS, and so I decided I needed to create some sort of a bank account to put all this money through so I could keep track of it. And to do that, you need to be a business. And I maybe could have done this as a DBA or doing business as, and not gone to the extra step of creating an LLC. But at that point, I am personally liable for anything this DBA or business does or happens. And this stuff that I'm building, it's got 120 volts coming in. It's got a transformer that steps the voltage up to almost 700 volts, converts it to DC. There's some high voltage electronics inside these things. And obviously the ones that I sell to people have a cover on the bottom of them, but I can't stop people from taking the screws out and going inside these things themselves. These big capacitors store voltage even after they're unplugged. And so someone could touch the wrong thing, even if it unplugged from the wall, and get electrocuted. And that's assuming people are going to unplug it before they open it up and start poking around inside this thing. Also, even with it running, just sitting on a shelf, somebody had a little too much to drink, spills their Jack and Coke all over it, saturates it with this liquid. Then they get the smart idea of, hey, I'm not going to even turn it off. I'm going to go get a wet rag and start wiping this thing off with it powered up, standing on a concrete floor. The next thing they know, they're laying on the floor in AFib from the electricity going through their heart, and they're dead, and people are wanting to sue me. And those are just the scenarios that I could think of. And maybe what you're doing isn't, dangerous like this stuff could be in the wrong situation. But no matter how many disclaimers I put in some kind of a manual, I could still end up getting personally sued. And I have some, retirement investments. I own my own house. I've got hundreds of thousands of dollars that people could take from me if I don't insulate myself from this business that probably isn't going to make me a ton of money. It's just something I enjoy, but I still have to be careful. And so that's why I decided to get an LLC, and I'm going to explain to you how that process works and how not to get taken advantage of. So when I first talked to some of my friends, they were like, oh yeah, there are these websites you can go online and they'll create it for you for free. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure that somebody's going to be making some money. That these companies don't exist by just being a charity. There's nobody paying them to give people free services. So the more I dug into this, they may not charge you anything for filing your LLC paperwork, but they insist on being your registered agent. And these sites or companies charge anywhere from $150 to $300 a year, and you're stuck with them as your registered agent from here forward. So you're going to have this annual expense. Some of them do it by the month. Some of them are worse than others. But there's no free ride here. And the sad thing is, you're filling out the same paperwork on their website that you're going to fill out at the Secretary of State's website. And they may have some, little check boxes or help you, decide which of these things you need to check off. But you can do that research and do it yourself. And in my case, I live in Georgia. To go to the Secretary of State's website, it's $100 to file the paperwork to start an LLC. And you basically want to be, you're not a sole proprietor, you're a sole member. So you don't have any employees. You want to make sure on any of these forms that ask that, you have one employee, that's you. And there's one member. And if there's things like, is it a sole member or a partnership? You're not a partnership. And for God's sakes, don't try to start an S-Corp. You don't need that. You want to do an LLC. So just go straight to the Secretary of State's website. And there is a specific order. You want to do the LLC first. Because you can't do the other parts of this process until you get your business name. So for every state, there's like some kind of a search engine where you can search business names. Make sure the name you want to use hasn't already been used by somebody. And mine was Skunky Designs. I was pretty sure that nobody, had used that name yet. But you want to check and make sure before you bother filing the paperwork. Now, it does say that if, it fails, that you don't have to pay again. They'll just tell you what was wrong, and, you can figure out what was done wrong that they wouldn't allow you to create the LLC. So, go to the Secretary of State's website, fill out the paperwork, pay the $100, and unless I think it's another $100 if you want an expedited one, but it took about a week, and I'm assuming you're not in a huge hurry, and if you're like me, you're trying to do this on a budget, so just pay the minimum. In about a week, you're going to get a thing from the Secretary of State that is a certificate of organization. And it's going to have your company name. It's going to have the date that it was created and signed by the Secretary of State. And this is what you need to get a bank account. It's also what you need to get an EIN. And there's a little bit of confusion there on a TIN versus an EIN. You want an EIN. Even though you don't have any employees, and there's a place to check that out where you don't expect to have any W-2s and you're not anticipating, this other stuff that would throw flags up where they would be expecting to be getting, employee withholdings and all that kind of stuff. You're a single employee, sole member LLC. So the next thing you do is you go to the IRS and you can get your EIN one time online for free. And I'll warn you, you're going to get this. As soon as you file your LLC, especially if you're using your name and address as the registered agent, which is what I would do. I mean, you can pay somebody else to be your registered agent if you really feel like it's a problem, but I would just, for a small company, just make yourself the registered agent and use your home address as your business address unless you're planning on renting space. Once you do that, you're going to get all these companies mailing you stuff. Like these folks are like, hey, we'll get your EIN for you for $199.95. It's free. You go to the IRS, and I swear it took 10 minutes to fill out the paperwork, and within 5 minutes they emailed me back my EIN number. And you'll get a paperwork like this from the IRS showing your EIN. Do not let these companies make you believe that you need them to file this paperwork. You don't. And I'll go into another thing they try to sell you after you get a setup too. So back to the order, you get your LLC formation document, then you get your EIN document and your number that you're going to use. Now, I talked to my accountant, and he was saying that as part of filing my personal taxes, he'll be using my EIN number, but it's on a Schedule C on your personal taxes. And so you don't file like as the corporation or the company or the business taxes. It's self-employment income, and it's just done through your personal taxes. And I already have an accountant that's doing my taxes for me. I'm not going to even pretend to understand, given my investment income and other stuff I've got going on. I stopped doing my own taxes a long time ago. So if you're trying to do your own taxes, that's for another video. So talk to your accountant before you do any of this stuff. So the next thing I did is I went to the bank that I bank with, which is Bank of America. I know a lot of people hate these big banks, but I've had good luck working with them. And so went to the Bank of America with this paperwork, and they opened a business fundamentals business account. You also want to get a credit card that is not a personal credit card. Do not use the debit card that you get with your business account for anything other than depositing checks in an ATM or that sort of thing. Do not use it like a credit card, because if some fraud happens, just happened to me on my personal credit card, get a notice that $6,000 got charged. Somebody had skimmed my card number, and if it had been a debit card, that money would have been pulled out of my checking account. And at some point I could have filed a fraud thing. Probably take 30 days to get your money back. And then if it draws the level of your account down too low, then other checks and stuff that you wrote will start bouncing. And the fraud doesn't cover that. So again, make sure you get a bank account and a credit card, and then link everything through that. And use that for everything related to your business. And that's super important, and I'll explain why in a minute. That you need to totally separate the finances between your business and from your personal stuff. Because that's how you get caught out with what they call a fake LLC, where if something happens, somebody sues you and they say, well, they're not really a business. They got an LLC just to try to hide behind. And you will lose in court if you commingle all your money and then try to pretend like you're a company. So the next thing I did is I found a draft online for an operating agreement. And this is an official document that explains how your company is laid out, how you're the sole member, and this is actually a single member managed limited liability company. And it talks about your formation, your registered agent. It talks about your business purpose. It talks about how additional members would get admitted if you did partner up with somebody. It talks about your distributions, your profit and losses, your powers of the members, all this stuff that's, legal documentation that this is an actual company. This isn't just like a shell or a name. This is a real company. And then at the end of it, it talks about the responsibility on the bookkeeping and reporting and all that stuff. And you need to follow this stuff that's in your operating agreement. You can't just create this operating agreement and then ignore it. You got to do what you say you're going to do here. And then on the final page, I have the capital contributions, the certification of the member, and then notarize it. Take it somewhere and get a notary to notarize you signing this on that date. So in the future, somebody can't come back and say, oh, yeah, you created this after we filed the lawsuit. You need to have a record that this was created at the formation of the company. And I didn't realize how important this was until I really started thinking about it and talking to a lawyer friend of mine that saying that you need to do everything like this is a real company, because this is a real company. This isn't a fake company. You know, I'm creating a company to manufacture these products and sell them, and that the company is going to make a profit doing that. And you need to have an operating agreement that explains about how the company is going to operate to show that this is a legit company, which Skunky Designs is now, starting January 1st, 2024. So we haven't opened our doors yet, but first of the year, this is all going to be going online and be, you know, when I start selling products. So then we get back to all these companies that are sending you this paperwork saying, hey, you need this. This is super important. You need to get one of these and we can help you out. Well, they're not here to help you out. They're here to make money. And it seems scammy to me or predatory, but they're not doing anything illegal. And, you know, they're no different than the people that say, hey, we'll create the LLC for you. They found a way to make money off of people opening their own businesses that don't do their due diligence and are just lazy and says, oh, I'm just going to let these people do, I'm going to pay these people $200 to get my EIN because I just don't want to be bothered with trying to figure it out. So that's on you to buy into this stuff. So the last thing these folks trying to sell you, one thing is a labor law poster. Well, if you don't have any employees, you don't need one of those. Or at least that's my understanding. And I might be wrong, but I think I'm right on that, because that's to inform your employees. But if you're the sole member and there's only one employee, that's you, you don't need to be notifying people about stuff that you've already read. And I'm aware of everything that's on this poster. So, yeah, that seems pointless to me. I'm not going to spend $125 for one to put up here in my basement. The last thing is this certificate of status. Like, that's what this place is calling it. Here's another one. Yeah, this one's trying to sell me a certificate of existence. And that's what they call it in Georgia. Here's another one trying to sell me a certificate of existence. Both of these are wanting $75, and these folks want $95 to get a certificate of existence. And they make it sound like that you've got to have one of these. Well, really, it's the same thing that you've got here in this certificate of formation. It's the same information. And I believe the certificate of existence is more for, once they've printed one of these, you will not get emailed another one. You can't ask for another one of these. You get it one time emailed to you. So you better print it and save that file, because it says, we will not send you a duplicate of this. Okay? The certificate of existence is, I think, for when you've lost that paperwork of the formation and you need to prove that this LLC exists in Georgia as a legal entity. Probably didn't need to do it, but again, I went to the Secretary of State's website. For $10, they'll mail you or email you the certificate of existence, which has got the same information on it the certificate of formation has. You probably save $10 not getting this, but I figured, hey, for $10, somebody might ask for that one day, and I'll already have it. So it was worth spending $10 for that. So in total, I've spent $110 getting my LLC created, all the legal documentation. Again, with an LLC, you don't need like articles of incorporation and all that kind of stuff like you do with an S Corp. You don't have to file, at least in Georgia, you don't have to file this operating agreement. I think there's 3 states, and you have to check with your state. I think there's 3 states that do require an operating agreement. And again, I found a really good draft for one of these free online that I was able to just edit with my name and address and the company name and all that kind of stuff and create my own. And so you don't need to spend a ton of money on this stuff, and you do not need to hire a lawyer. Now, some of you may not be comfortable with trying to do this stuff on your own, and you might want to just pay somebody. You know, you may think, hey, for a few $100s, I'd rather make sure this is done right. But this isn't rocket science kind of stuff. And you don't need somebody. It's not like drawing up a will, which I do think is worth paying someone to do for your unique situation, to make sure that something does happen to you, that the people you leave behind aren't going to end up with a headache, because I've seen that happen. But with an LLC like this, I don't think this is super complicated. It's not really hard to do, and it's a really good way to protect yourself from some side hustle little business that you've gotten started from ending up losing everything that you own from a mistake that you make or someone else makes, and then you end up getting sued and lose everything you have. It's just not worth it. So again, if you're going to do this, you can't just go file an LLC and say, okay, I'm done. You need to create the bank account. You need to create the operating statement. You need to follow through with all that stuff. You need to keep records. And you need to show, in case something does happen, that this is a separate business from your personal finances. Because if it's all commingled together, somebody can pierce that veil and make the case that they just spent the $100 on an LLC and they're not really a business. So anyway, there's probably some stuff I forgot or missed. I'd love to hear in your comments what y'all think about this. I hope this has helped some folks that have been kind of confused about this or were thinking about doing this. I know, again, I'm not a lawyer. This isn't legal advice because I'm not an attorney. I'm just a person that had a fun hobby that I want to turn into a small business, and what I did to create this LLC to help protect myself in case something happens in the future. So anyway, if you enjoyed this content, please like the video, share it with your friends. Please subscribe to the channel. You might find some of my other content fun. If you're here for just this business thing, then yeah, I can kind of understand why you might not sub. But yeah, if you're into audio gear, hey, this is some cool stuff we're doing here. Thanks to all you other supporters on my channel. Hope y'all have enjoyed this video. And until next time, have a nice day.